different angles and stretching it, it changes a little, but still it retains its value. And this is another example. Okay, this is braided wire. So what they have done, they have taken a like envelope where the two wires can go in, and for separating the two wires from shorting, they have coiled the separator on one of the rod. Very interesting, right? So that they don't short anywhere in between. In such capacitors, the shortage can be one of the biggest problem. If you have just the electrolyte in between the two, they will tend to touch somewhere at one end, right? If you have a long cable. But to solve this problem, so these people have utilized an approach where they take one of the wire and wrap the separator on it, so that it will never come in physical direct contact with the another electrode. Very interesting, right? And again, so I'm not showing the performance data, but here if it is visible, you can see the capacitance obtained for such devices around 11 to 19 millifarad per centimeter square, which is not a big number, by the way. Okay, one needs to improve these numbers, but what is important is to see its architectural design, and where the low power requirements are there, one can use such kind of devices. And still improving this number is a challenge. One can grow architectures, more hierarchical architecture on these wires, and improve their performance. Also, one can think of using them in series and parallel to improve the numbers. Another example I will take is transparent supercapacitors. Okay, so so this is a quiz. Tell me one material which is transparent and conducting.
FTO.
FTO, very good. Any other? Other than FTO? FTO and ITO. These are the transparent conducting electrodes. PET sheet is not conducting, sorry. 0 marks. Any other material? TiO2 is little bit transparent. Zinc oxide probably is much more transparent than TiO2. TiO2 is more whitish.
PET sheet coated with ITO.
Very good. Anything else?
Ultra thin.
Ultra thin? Very good, very good. Ultra thin graphene can be transparent as well as conducting. If you have a single layer of graphene, you know what is the transparency of a single layer graphene?
90%.
97.3%. Okay? A single layer of graphene is 97.3% transmitting. And if you keep adding the layer, the transparency increases. Sorry, decreases. By the factor of it decreases linearly with the number of layers. There is a lot of work on this, and this comes under the category of transparent conducting electrodes, right? So ITO, FTO, all these are transparent conducting oxides. Zinc oxide is also one of the example of transparent conducting oxide. So if you look at the mobile screen, right, this touch screen or the display of this computer, you think it is a simple glass? You think it is just a normal window glass?
No.
What is it then?
It's different. It's Gorilla Glass. I don't know what is it.
So, you think it is conducting?
It's made of any liquid, sir.
This is a transparent conducting glass.
Liquid crystal. OLED.
OLEDs are not on the glass, but OLED function because of this glass. So this glass has pixels. If you carefully go and like he's making a video, if you see its video, you will see, or if you take an image of the screen on your computer, okay, under high magnification, you will see pixels. This whole screen is pixelated into 10 micron or 5 micron pixels, and each pixel is a OLED. If it is OLED based technology, if it is LED, it will be different, right? So all these screens are pixelated, and they are all built with a transparent conducting electrode. All the displays. Why I am going to transparent conducting electrode? Because I want you to understand transparency for devices. Right? So all our electronic devices have a transparent conducting electrode, and ITO, FTO is a very conventional material which is used in all these devices. FTO can sustain high temperatures up to 400, that's why you use it in DSSC solar cells, while ITO can sustain only up to 200, 300 maximum. That's why they are used mainly in organic solar cells, OLED fabrication, and other optoelectronic devices. Even in aircraft windows, you may have noticed defogging, right? So all these have transparent conducting electrode. Even in car windows, the good like hi-fi cars, if you see carefully in their window, you will either see there will be some small metal stripes, or they will have this ITO glass, so that like you press a button and it will undergo defogging. Now thing is, how do we make it into a supercapacitor? Can we structure it? Can we structure the material on it such a way that half of the space on the electrode is utilized for its electrochemical action, and half of the area gives you transparency? Can you pattern it in such a way? Imagine it has kind of mesh. You take a mesh, like here you are seeing a block or grid, right? If you see from here, you will see it, like if you see from angle closely, you will see it is opaque. It is not very transparent. But if you go close and if you see straight, you will see that it is transparent, right? So this is called semi-transparent nature of the device. Now if I can bring in the active material on this device in such a way that it doesn't occupy completely and it has more of a perforated type structure, I can have some visual transparency from the device coming in. Now where do I need such devices? Why do I need a supercapacitor to be transparent? Supercapacitor doesn't have any role of light. Why do I need it to be transparent? Good question, right? Any guess? Who needs a supercapacitor to be transparent?
To make smart windows.
Yeah. So this smart window concept is a very new futuristic concept again, which people are trying to do, where they want to incorporate all the active devices in the window itself. Like you are going in the car. On the car top there is like window, right? In some cars there is a small area window. They want to incorporate solar cell as well as supercapacitor in the same window. So there are companies which are giving projects for this kind of application. It's a high-end application. You may see in next 5 years that you have a car with a supercapacitor in your window, that you connect your charger. All the power which is required inside the car will come through solar cells and supercapacitors or batteries. Okay, so here what they have done, you can see the device, it's looking quite transparent. They have made some nano cups, so they allow transparency from this side, and even the electrolyte which is there inside is transparent. It is PVA, H2SO4 or H3PO4. They're usually transparent electrolytes. And then they have these small architectures coming in which give you a lot of surface area for device to perform, while it gives you a lot of transmittance through the cup shape. So this is one example. There are many such examples in the literature where you will see that people are trying to make transparent conducting electrodes based supercapacitor, where they will take a material film and wash out one of the component, and it will leave some empty spaces. Okay, it will not even only generate porosity but also some transparency, so that light can come in and they can add some functionality of a solar cell as well within the same material, or use it as a window material. Now coming to printable supercapacitors. Printable supercapacitors are something which will be making more impact when you need in-plane devices. Mainly, like we discussed, micro supercapacitors, where your device component need to be ultra thin, like thin film devices. That's where printing becomes important. So these are one or two examples where they have taken some ink, like in the form of graphene polyaniline dispersion, or it can be any active material, and then you screen print it. This is another geometry. So you are seeing a circular electrode in the middle, and again another semicircle on the outside. So inside circle is one electrode, and then this semicircle arc is another electrode. So these are two electrodes, concentric electrodes, which acts like a supercapacitor, and the gap between the concentric rings is your electrolyte medium. Now the next example is compressible foam-like structures. You can have you heard of aerogels? Right? So like graphene oxide, people try to do freeze drying to make them foam-like structure. Or you can take a foam itself and convert it into a carbon-based material or functionalize it with something. Some people take nickel foam as a support material, or carbon foam, which are compressible, and on that surface they will functionalize it with some active material. Okay, so but in these devices again it is very important to test them, because even if they look fancy, they look attractive, that they are ready, or the electrode is very good, it is quite integrated together, but ultimately it comes to how it performs. So whenever you make any device, you have to do its electrochemical characterization, you run a CV and see how much capacitance you are deriving out of it, and what happens when you compress it. So here you can see some data. Different compressive strains are applied, and you can see the change probably here. Here the deformation with respect to cycle, and these are nothing but the compressive strain cycles which are applied to the foam to see its integrity. Here I do not have the data on how the electrochemical data changes when you apply strain, but one needs to look into it whenever you make any device like this. So this is another example where a device can be made in a very simple way. So this is made on paper. You have your pencil lead, that itself is nothing but graphite, right? When you write with a pencil, you are writing it with graphene. You are creating graphene just by writing using your pencil lead. So there are reports where people have used pencil written graphene to make supercapacitor. Very interesting. So a Xerox paper is taken, and on that pencil writing is laid, and depending on what kind of geometry you want out of plane, you can make full gray. If you want, even you can make micro supercapacitor, interdigitated electrode, just by the way you write. And if you take a multimeter and do a simple test, you can do even today at your home. Write some letters with pencil, straight lines, and you will see that they are having good resistance in few ohms, hundreds of ohms. And the resistance, as you know, is a function of length. As you go longer in length, your resistance will increase. So you can see that it is linear. It is almost like a good resistor. So you can draw it the way you like, and you can make devices. Even people have used this kind of pencil on paper approach. Even Professor Kulkarni has done a lot of work in this direction, where they made different device elements like capacitors, resistors, and different circuitry around, even microfluidic devices. A lot of things can be done just by simple writing on paper with pencil. But here controlling the pressure with which you write and the resistance precisely, those things becomes more challenging and kind of irreproducible. Like you may not end up with the same value device every time. So this is all I have for today in terms of examples. Now I will talk a little bit on commercial aspects, cost analysis. We have not talked about how much one supercapacitor device is going to cost us, or how much a battery is going to cost us, and how it stands with respect to commercial devices. So this is more about, this is taken from this paper. Okay, I will send you the slides anyways. So when one wants to estimate the cost of your, when you want to estimate the cost of your device, you need to look at all the ingredients, the process, and the performance of the device, the cycle, the lifetime of the device, and then accordingly evaluate its cost. So this is an example where they have taken all the materials like solvents, salt, active material, binder, additive, and then they are more like different components, and then the cell sealing, when you assemble the cell, what it cost, and then again coming to the integrated device. So one has to take cost of the whole process rather than looking only at the material like coating steps, then drying, evaporating, everything one has to estimate to get a real estimate. It's sometimes very difficult to estimate how much a device prepared in your lab is going to cost. So usually what we tend to do, we will say, oh, we are using very cheap chemicals, that's all. It's just a paper on pencil, that's all, right? Or just ink, pour it and it's done. But when you want to think of it to be a commercial product at the end of day, one needs to look at what all it will need when you want to scale it up. What equipments or what facility will be required for it to be a commercial product at the end of day. So one needs to do an overall analysis of the production cost, then also its use, how long will be its use, and then the end of how much cycles or how much is the stability, all those things comes under this umbrella.